Welcome back to Mustache Moto. It's Ben, and today we're going to talk about RPM and how that affects your bike's performance. If you grew up driving a stick shift like I did, you probably don't need this video because you understand the RPM and how that affects the performance of your engine. But there's a lot of people that grew up driving automatics that are now getting motorcycles, and I think this is going to be really helpful for them to understand where you are in the RPM range and how that affects the bike's performance, because it can make a huge difference. So in general, now things are going to vary depending on the type of bike, the type of engine in the bike, those sorts of things. But in general, higher in the RPM range means you're going to have much more immediate power, more power. When you crack the throttle on, it's also going to give you much more engine braking when you roll the throttle off. The bike's going to feel really immediate, can almost feel twitchy at times if you're real high in the RPM range, but it's a lot higher performance. It's almost like you modified the engine and juiced up the bike. Conversely, if you're on the low end of the RPM range, the bike's not going to have that power. When you hit the throttle, it's going to be a slower build. It's also going to have very little engine braking when you roll off the throttle. Now, why would you ever want to be in that lower end of the RPM range? You know, if you're going a steady speed, you're on the highway, you're on a back road, you're not on a major hill, lower RPM means better gas mileage. So you'd want to be in sixth gear if you can, if it's not going to make any difference. You've probably noticed this discrepancy, this difference, if you've ever been cruising on a highway in sixth and you go to pass somebody, and you whack the throttle, and it seems like the bike's anemic. You got to kick it down a gear, maybe two, and then you take off and you're going. So that's the basic principle. We're going to get out and ride around, and I'll show you, kind of how that really does affect the bike. But next time you're out riding, try going, instead of sixth gear, if that's your normal cruising gear, go to fifth, maybe even fourth, if your RPMs aren't up to the red line, and just feel how that affects the bike. I mean, it really makes a huge difference. So cruising along here, 45 miles an hour. Look, I could be at sixth gear, going about 2,500 RPM. You can see gear, RPM, and throttle position there. All right, so that's fine. That's going to be probably my best gas mileage. Low RPM, just nice and smooth. We're not on a big hill, so I'm not having to crank it. Now, downside of that, if I need to accelerate, oh, it's not there. That was full throttle. That's hard on the engine. That's called bogging, right? So let's go down. Let's go fifth gear. We'll bring it up to about 2,900 RPM. Still decent on the gas mileage. If I crack it, okay, we got better acceleration, but we're nowhere near what we'd need for passing somebody. I'd have to kick down a gear, maybe two gears. But either one of these, perfectly fine if you're just kind of cruising along. Let's go to fourth gear. All right, we're about 3,300. Cruising along here, 45 miles an hour. Okay, 47. Get to a straighter area. So the engine's a little happier. It's a little bit closer, more meaty part of the power band. Now, this is a big engine, and it's got a really wide power band, so you can really get away with just about any gear in a lot of situations here. So let's see. Yeah, right down here, I'll get it straight. The other thing I should say is it also affects how much engine braking you have, right? So the higher the RPMs, the more engine braking. So at 45, okay, that's pretty decent acceleration. We're getting there. And moderate engine braking. Not a whole lot. Okay, third gear. Now we're going over 4,000 RPM, right? If I let off, more engine braking. If I give it gas, it's starting to go. If she really wants to go. So what happens second gear? Okay, 45, we're going 5,300, which is still it's only halfway to the red line, so we're not going that fast, that hard. I'm gonna have to wait and pick this up when we get back to the higher speed limit. I don't want to crack the throttle because it's going to take off way too fast. But that higher RPM, lower gear, higher RPM, you start getting more throttle response, both accelerate and decelerate, right? Acceleration when you crack it open, engine braking when you close it. When I'm in the twisties, you know, and I want to really feel like I got a performance bike and I'm working it hard, I kick it down maybe into second gear and just leave it there, because I know it's gonna take off when I hit the gas, and it's gonna roll back down real fast when I crack it shut. Okay, as we get into some twistier stuff, I'm in fourth gear and I can kind of just laze on through here. I'm not hitting the gas hard. This engine would bog a bit. I'm also not relying much on engine braking. It's going to kind of float through all this stuff, right? And that works fine. I could probably have done that in fifth gear. We could do that too, about the same speed. But what happens is when it gets tighter and twistier, and I want to have more fun, and you want to feel more performance and more immediacy, you want to go down a couple of gears. So maybe even second gear. And that way you're in a higher RPM. The engine's right on the higher end of the power band. And then also you can just shut the throttle. Look, engine brake. And it's more immediate, like I'm connected. That throttle, when I roll it, it goes. Where if I'm in third or fourth gear, it's not gonna be like that. All right, so I'm actually gonna switch. I'm so used to changing gears. All right, let me leave it in second. This engine, okay, I'm still only about 6,500, so I'm not even close to the red line. I got engine braking. I got immediate throttle response. Engine brake. Just leave it in gear. Can wind it up high. And I'm still not even at the high end. I could probably do this in first, but I just feel like I'm torturing the engine too much. The engine brake to slow down there. I don't even have to touch my brakes. And I got, look, if I hit it, okay. I chickened out. So the front wheel came up that fast in second gear. This bike has a lot of power. Real fast. So if you want to moderate that power, if you want to kind of have it tempered a little bit, you can go down or go up and get a couple gears. So now in fourth, very little engine braking. Look, on the gas, off the gas. So I'm gonna have to use more brakes. I'm actually gonna put it in third because it's pretty tight. We'll just laze around, and then I'm using the brakes to control my speed as well as the throttle rather than the engine braking. Just makes for a calmer, you know, you may want to, if you had a passenger on the back, you don't want to crack your helmets together. So these principles hold no matter what bike or what engine you're using, but there are some particulars. You know, if you've got a larger displacement bike, fewer cylinders, that tends to have a wider power band, so it's a little bit less effective. You can kind of get away with being up or down a gear without too much difference. Where if you've got a smaller engine or you've got more cylinders, it tends to be more dramatic because it's tends to be a smaller power band. You might have more peak horsepower, but it's in a smaller range, so up or down a gear really does make a difference in those situations. You've probably actually noticed this difference in RPM range, whether you know it or not. And that situation would be if you're out on a back road or a highway and you're cruising along in sixth gear and you go to pass somebody and you just crack the throttle. You're not going to get a huge jump. It's not going to take off and get past the guy. What you got to do is go down a gear, maybe down 2 gears to pass, and then you've got way, way more power. That's exactly what I'm talking about. But you can actually ride in that higher gear and make the bike feel like more of a performance bike and have it react so much quicker. As long as you're below the red line, you're not going to have an issue with the engine. Now, it will burn more gas, but it can be a lot more fun too. I can't think of anything else to say. We're going to call that a wrap.